Hello everyone, my name is John and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how to use the Bitcoin 60-day cycle to your full advantage when you're trading Bitcoin. The 60-day Bitcoin cycle determines where the lows and the highs are going to be set, and you can use this as a super profitable trading strategy. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, you've liked the video, and leave a comment on your favorite part of the video. Let's jump straight into it. The 60-day Bitcoin cycle is used to determine the highs and the lows of Bitcoin, and you can use this into the future to determine where the price is going to go and how it's going to travel there. You can even use this 60-day cycle in stocks, Forex, basically every trading asset has this 60-day cycle. Now, not every move is going to be exactly 60 days. We can use a 10% tolerance on either side. So the Bitcoin 60-day cycle can fall within 66 days of the cycle, or also 54 days, as there is a 10% tolerance on each side. Now, before I show you the exact 60-day cycles that are on Bitcoin right now, let's actually go through one small detail that we need to determine, and will actually determine which way we're trending. Are we trending more to the long side, or are we trending more to the short side? When we're trading using the 60-day cycle, there are three key components that we always need to take into account. The first is left translated, middle translated, or right translated cycle. Now, I'm going to explain them all right now, as they are the key to understanding this 60-day cycle. Right here on this chart, I've drawn in a 60-day cycle using the price and range tool. So I've just gone from here to here, and that is exactly 60 days of the cycle. And what I've added in is the midpoint, which is the 30th day out of all the 60 days. We're not looking at the price right now. We're just looking at this 60-day cycle, and then we'll move into the chart and actually put the 60-day cycle exactly on these bars to determine where, how, and when Bitcoin is moving. So using the left translated cycle, now what does that mean? A left translated cycle would mean that the Bitcoin top is actually left-hand side of the 60-day cycle. We're actually topping in this area here, and we're falling for a large amount of time. Now, a left translated cycle is not a bullish case. It's actually a bearish case. The reason being is we're only going up for a short amount of time in this 60-day cycle, and we're declining for the largest amount of time. We've only quickly gone up for 15 days, and we've been going down for 45 days, which means the momentum of this market is moving to the downside, and it's not a bullish case. It's definitely a bearish case, since on the left-hand side of the midpoint is when we're topping, we're going up for a very short amount of time, and we're dropping for an extended period of time. Out of the three translated cycles, this is the most bearish case, and it does not show that we're having continuous bullish momentum to the market. Let's now move over to middle translated cycle. A middle translated cycle would mean the Bitcoin top is happening right on the midpoint of the 60 days. So that would mean we're climbing up for 30 days, and we're also declining for 30 days. And out of this entire 60-day cycle, the top of the move is occurring right on the midpoint. So we're not overly bullish, we're also not overly bearish, as we've been climbing up for 30 days and we're falling for 30 days. The last and the most important one is the right-hand translated cycle. It would mean that the top of the Bitcoin price within the 60-day cycle is happening far on the right-hand side of the 60-day cycle, which would mean we're climbing for a large amount of time, and we're having a small decline that happens relatively quickly. The reason this is so extremely bullish is that we've been rising for basically 45 days out of the 60-day cycle, and then we do have a decline, but it happens relatively quickly, and we're only going down for roughly 15 days. It shows that there's continuous momentum over 45 days, pushing it to the bullish side, and when we do have a bearish push, it is quite quick before we then transition into the next 60-day cycle. The reason these are so important, whether it be left, middle, or right translated, is it shows basically what's going to happen in the future. If we've just had a right-hand translated cycle, it means that we've been growing for a lot longer than we've been bearish, and that means the next 60-day cycle has a much higher probability of actually continuing that right-hand translated. And when we're in the right-hand translated, it means we're in a bullish market, and we can buy and hold for an extended period of time to really hold and create those profits. Now, let's move over onto the chart, and we'll put the 60-day cycles exactly over the price of Bitcoin so you can understand how these translations actually work and how you can trade the 60-day Bitcoin cycle to your benefit. We're going to begin the first 60-day Bitcoin cycle right in this area here. Now, if you remember this massive crash that actually happened on the 9th of November, you would remember, and I remember extremely clearly, that this was the FTX crash, where we dropped over 35% in just 2 days. After that FTX crash, we actually began a new 60-day cycle, and we can draw that in right now. Using this price and range tool, we drag it over to the 10th of November, which is the day after the FTX crash, and we drag it 60 days in the future. As you can see right here, we're on the daily chart. We've dragged it 60 bars, which means 60 days, and we're going to drop it right there and leave it here. You can see where the midpoint of this 60-day cycle is. It is right here. Now, looking at this 60-day cycle, looking at just this area right through here, all the way, where did the top occur? The top occurred just past the midpoint of the 60-day cycle, but it would be a middle translated cycle, which shows that the top of the price within that 60 days occurred around the midpoint, which shows that we've been climbing for roughly 30 days out of the 60 days, and we've also been declining for roughly 30 days. This does not show we're overly bullish, but it also doesn't show that we're overly bearish. If in this case, we had a left translated cycle where we topped in here, it would mean that we have a long and extended downturn, and we would expect much lower prices in that instance. But you can see we actually had a middle translated cycle in this instance of the 60-day cycle. We begin the next 60-day Bitcoin cycle as soon as one finishes. Once this one is finished, we can drag this another 60 days in the future. And would you look at that? This is exactly 60 days from this date here to this date here. And look at what the 60-day cycle actually determined. We got the exact bottom of the 60-day cycle right in this area here, showing us that the end of the 60-day cycle occurred exactly on the 60th day, and then we had a massive push to the bullish side. If we then look back at the midpoint of this 60-day cycle, we're looking right through here. This midpoint of this would be the 30th day. And where did the highest point of Bitcoin actually occur? It occurred just slightly on the right-hand side of the translated cycle. So it shows that we have been slightly more bullish than we are bearish. Again, this is pretty close to the midpoint, but it is right-hand translated, as this one back here occurred literally the day or two after the midpoint. This has occurred another week past the midpoint. The top occurred 8 days after. So that means we've been climbing for 38 days and we've only been falling for 22 days, which shows that there's more bullish momentum in the market than there is bearish momentum. But if you wanted to call this middle translated, you could, but I still would call this right-hand translated, as 38 days out of 22 days we've been climbing, which is basically 2/3 we've been going up and 1/3 we've been going down. This is actually one of the most perfect 60-day cycles, as exactly 60 days from each point, from left to right, it actually determined the exact bottom. And usually what happens is we get the exact bottom around the 60th to the 66th day. Again, giving that 10% tolerance is not every single time we're going to have exactly 60 days, but it will be within 10%. If you start to see a Bitcoin cycle lasting 75 and 80 days, that is not the case, and it potentially means that the 60-day cycle has been drawn incorrectly, and it's actually better to start again. In this instance, we got an exact 60-day cycle. How would you be able to use this 60-day cycle to your advantage? Firstly, you're able to see that this is right-hand translated. As I've said before, when it's right-hand translated, it means that we've been growing for a lot longer than we have been falling. And it means that the next 60-day cycle has a higher probability of then continuing to the upside. If this was a left-hand translated cycle where we topped in this area here and then continued falling, that would be the bearish case, and it would be signaling to us that we're going to have a bearish momentum in the next 60-day cycle. But because this was right-hand translated, it's showing us that the next 60-day cycle has a high probability of then continuing to the upside, as we have been going for these last two 60-day Bitcoin cycles. Plus, you're also able to determine where the low in the price is going to occur. As you would have been able to draw, as soon as this 60-day cycle finished, you draw the next 60 days in as much as you wouldn't have seen any of these prices yet. What it can determine is when you're getting closer to the 60th day, that's when we're going to get a new cycle. And especially here, if it's right-hand translated, it means that we have a higher probability of continuing to the upside in the next 60-day cycle. So what you can do is at the end of this 60-day cycle, know that this bottom is probably going to be the bottom of the 60-day cycle because we've had prices right-hand translated and we're getting the low in price right on the 60 days. If the next 60 days is expected to be bullish, that means that this is most likely to be the bottom as we then continue to the upside. Let's now draw the next 60-day Bitcoin cycle in. As you can see, we start from this day here and we drag it 60 days. Right here would be 60 days. As you can see, this hasn't been the low. Right on the 60th day, you can see that right here was not the low. We continued lower for another day. We continued lower for a second day. We continued lower for a third day. As I said, there's a 10% tolerance on this 60-day Bitcoin cycle. And where I would be dragging it is at the bottom of this green bullish bar here. That would mean, how many days is that? You can actually see that is 63 days. That is perfectly within our 10% tolerance. So the next Bitcoin cycle actually occurred 63 bars. Now, let's find the midpoint of this. As you can see, we have these cross lines, so it tells me the exact midpoint. Since it's an odd number, I'm not able to get right in the middle at a 1.5. But if we say this is the midpoint right here, again, where did the top of Bitcoin occur? It occurred on the right-hand side of this cycle. It actually occurred right on this bar here. If you go from the midpoint and drag it across, it happens 6 days after the midpoint, which means we've been growing for 36 days and we were falling right now for 24 days, as shown right here. Let's actually drag from the bottom here. We were going up right here. 37 bars we went to the upside, and from this point here all the way to the downside, we had exactly 26 bars, which shows that there is more bullish momentum than there is bearish momentum. And look how perfect this is. Right in this area here, we actually could have called the lows because the 60th day occurred right in here. What we did get is a little sweep of these lows trying to test. A lot of people would have had stop losses in this area. What a lot of market makers are doing, retesting that area, wiping out all the retail stop losses before we then rocket to the upside. So you can see this 60-day cycle is continuously working in our favor. And we can not only pick the tops, we can also pick the bottoms. So right here, we know that after this day right here was the 60th day, that either that is going to be the bottom, and it wasn't quite, but the bottom occurred just 3 days after. So buying in this area was definitely a high probability play. Plus, knowing that this is a right-hand translated, we have been growing for a lot longer than we've been going down. As you can see, this extended upside move happened for a lot longer than this quick and little decline that we had. So again, we're in that right-hand translated of the cycle, which means what's the next 60-day cycle expected to do? It then means that the next 60-day cycle has a high probability of then continuing to the upside. So it's already able to tell me which direction I need to be looking at trading. Since this area in here, using some different strategies, this was initially a resistance level. Once a resistance level gets broken, it then gets used as a support level. As you can see right here was the resistance, got broken. Then we had support, 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 support in this area. So I can use multiple strategies to actually add confluence to my trading strategy. So I can use support and resistance coupled with this 60-day Bitcoin cycle telling me that we're right-hand translated. We have a high probability of continuing to the upside. We're right now at a support level, which we have a high probability of continuing to the upside. So it just gives me the direction of where I have higher probability trades to trade in the future. And that's what's so key about this 60-day cycle. If we were left-hand translated and the top occurred here and we'd been falling for a lot longer, that would mean you need to be very careful because the next 60-day cycle might not just be massive bullish moves to the upside. It would then have a higher probability of looking to actually turn around and start making a good decline. But since this occurred just after the midpoint, right hand translated, it means that we have higher probabilities of trading this next 60-day cycle in the long direction. Let's draw in the next 60-day cycle. As you can draw in here, we're going to end on this bottom bar here, and we can draw 60 days into the future. As you can see right there, that would be 60 bars right here. This would be the midpoint. So we need to see where the price of Bitcoin is topping or where it's going to occur. So you can see this being right hand translated. And since this cycle is starting right in this area up here, let's actually drag it right on the day. That's the 57 days. That's the midpoint right here. And you can see now we can expect how to trade this next 60-day cycle. What we are looking for, regardless of if it's left translated, where we have a really quick and really steep incline, and then we go down for an extended period of time, that would signal to me that this is now going to be the top for Bitcoin for the next few months, and the next 60-day cycle after this is ended is actually going to turn down to the downside. But we don't know that just yet. We need to see, where is this top going to occur? Is prices going to travel around to the midpoint before we then continue down? That wouldn't be overly bullish. That wouldn't be overly bearish. Or are we going to get another bullish case where we travel for a long amount of time and in the right hand side of the translated cycle before we then continue down? So we've had a long and extended uptrend before we have a short decline that only occurs 15 to 20 days out of the entire 60-day cycle. So I really hope you've understood exactly what this video was about, how you can use these continuous 60-day cycles to your advantage to actually determine which trades you need to take and use them as confluence with other trading strategies that you have. You're not able to just use the 60-day cycle to say buy now and sell now. But what it does give me right here is it gives me a higher probability play to say, yes, if I'm going to be trading Bitcoin over these next 60 days, which direction would be the highest probability play? And right now, since we had a right-hand translated cycle two 60-day cycles ago, and then in the last 60-day cycle that just finished, we had another right-hand translated. It's just showing me that if I was going to bet, that you need to be betting to the long side rather than the short side, because the probability is in that favor. So because of that, I'm now able to determine that these trades that I'm taking in these next couple of days are going to be to the long side. Reason being is there's higher probability, and potentially I am expecting a bit of a left-hand translated cycle where we go up, but we go up very, very quickly, and then we have a long and drawn-out bear trend, which would then signal that the 60-day cycle after this, 60 bars exactly from there, would actually have a higher probability, if we did have this left-hand translated, of then doing the exact same thing, where we have 15 days of actually going up, and then we have another 45 days of continuing to the downside. So using this left and right hand translated, middle translated, knowing that when the Bitcoin cycle is going to end, that's how I knew just over here that the Bitcoin cycle was going to end soon, because we were on the 60th day right in here. If we bring this back 3 bars, right here was the 60th day. So I knew that the next 60-day cycle has to occur either now or within the next 6 days, as there is that 10% tolerance either side. The Bitcoin 60-day cycle is going to occur between either 54 days to 66 days, and very high chance that it does occur exactly on the 60th day. So you can see right here, I'm already knowing that, okay, I need to be looking at price, because this is going to be the end of one cycle, and we're then looking to transition into the next cycle. It occurred on the 63rd day. As soon as this bottom came in, I became extremely bullish, knowing that this is a support area, knowing that we're at the end of the 60-day cycle, knowing that it's right-hand translated, and the next cycle looks to be making longs to the upside. I'm using this strategy every single day when I'm trading the crypto markets, the stock market, the Forex market. This strategy can be used in every market available, because these 60-day cycles occur everywhere. Institutions are looking at them, but retail traders aren't taking much notice to these 60-day cycles. I hope you enjoyed this video on how you can use the trading strategy of the 60-day Bitcoin cycle to your advantage and actually profit in the market. Make sure you're subscribed, leave a like on the video, and also leave a comment if you've really enjoyed this video and how it's helped you create a more profitable trading plan.